Origin and History of Catholicism, Part 2. Origin and History of Catholicism, Part 2. Stefan Maia with you. AddedSouls.ca is the website. I labor alongside the East Coast, churchofchrist.ca. How are you doing this morning? It's 8 a.m. Atlantic Daylight Time. We go live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 8 a.m. Atlantic Daylight Time. Today we want to take part 2 of our podcast sessions regarding the origin and history of Catholicism. Yesterday was part 1, and I highly encourage you, if you've not seen part 1 or listened to part 1 yet, to go ahead and check out the archived edition, and you can follow along therein. We want to continue with our friends over at apologeticpress.org. In the article that was written by an individual called Moises Pinedo, if I'm pronouncing that properly. If not, forgive me. I am a French Acadian speaking English words, what seems to be a Spanish name. So, give me a bit of grace over here, right? Origin and History of Catholicism. Yesterday was a wonderful session. I think we ran a podcast for about an hour and a half. Took the time it takes to kind of learn together and ask questions together. And we want to continue with that path. Yesterday having to do with the origin of Christianity, the origin of the Catholic Church, and its beginning, birth, and various other points that were encouraging, if you will, challenging, very challenging our faith, challenging our thoughts. Are we believing the right thing? Are we going about our life in the proper way with Jesus? As I've mentioned before, I was born and raised in a Catholic home, Catholic community, Catholic province. My parents' parents, we've been within the religious tradition of the Holy Mother Church, the Roman Catholic Church, for centuries and centuries and centuries. That is the only church that was in our community. It was the only church permitted in our community. That's what we believe to be Christianity. And that was the way for our people, our kind, our culture. It's what we had been given. Catholicism taught us. It loved us. It gave us food, shelter, and clothing. Gave us a school. We'd go to school. We'd recite the prayers. We'd talk to the priest. We'd confess our sins, This was our kind and culture. This was our tradition. And to go against that would be going against our ancestry, going against our parents and their parents. To say that we are wrong in any way in our religious beliefs would mean that everyone we love is wrong, and everyone that we love who has passed on is wrong, and that we can't accept that, right? Many can't accept that. And it's because of the perspective we have in a great many ways. If our loved ones who passed within the belief system and tradition of the Roman Catholic Church, if we honor them, if we love their memory, we shall indeed want to know more about Jesus and draw closer to Jesus. Because one of two things is a reality. Either our loved ones who passed with the belief of Roman Catholicism. If they're in a good place, then we want to go to the good place, right? If they're in a bad place, well, they don't want us to go to a bad place. Either or, we remember them, and we honor them, and we love them, and we miss them, and we do so by getting to know the gospel better, more accurately, closer to Christ. And that can be challenging, because it takes humility. It takes a heart that wants to learn. It takes a heart that wants to grow. And we have to focus on what we are gaining spiritually in our faith, and not what we are losing, not what we have to sacrifice. That's very important. Most don't do that. Most don't take the time to ponder on the thought that comes to their mind. But some of us do, because some of us have recognized that, hey, that there is an afterlife. There is an afterlife. Once we die, we go somewhere else. It's either heaven, it's either paradise or torment. And we want to know. We want to know if the ancestral lineage of our religious traditions is right or wrong. And we want to know because we believe in objective reality. We're not talking about pizza toppings. Pizza toppings is subjective. There are many things that are subjective. My wife is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. That's subjective. She is to me. She obviously is not to you. We're not talking about pizza toppings, are we? We're not talking about I like anchovies, you like pepperoni, okay, whatever. It's subjective. It doesn't matter, ultimately. Well, if we're speaking about 1 + 1 = 2 and the doctrine of Christ and the reality of the afterlife to come, well, these things are not, well, you believe what you want to believe and I'll believe what I want to believe. This is we all need to believe this. Now we can choose not to. We have free will. We can choose not to believe. We can choose to say, you know what, I just don't want to believe that. And then we'll try to justify why we don't want to believe that. Well, that can't be true. And then we bring up these emotional arguments. But some of us, we truly want to go down that rabbit hole. And we want to ask questions. And want to know answers. And so we began our journey yesterday in part 1 regarding the origin and history of Catholicism. Catholicism, under the umbrella of quote-unquote Christendom, is the most prominent power. And most individuals who would profess Christianity or associate with Christianity associate with Roman Catholicism. And so it's kind of interesting, at the very least, necessary at its top position to know the origin and history of Roman Catholicism. Does it come from the mind of God? Is the Roman Catholic Church the church Jesus built? If so, good, fine. Run on. But if not, well, maybe we need to change what we think. You know, the Jews of the first century, they were firmly believing in their ordinances. They were firmly believing in their ordinances to be, Bible fact. And though some of them was from the utility of Christian or of scriptural principle, they were binding law where no law was to be bound. And Christ came and said, you need to change the way you think. So even though we've had a tradition for centuries, maybe we need to change the way we think. If it draws us closer to Jesus. If the truth sets us free, then let the truth set us free. So yesterday we started our journey in regards to the origin and history of Roman Catholicism, the church you and I were given at birth, the church we grew up in. We're going to keep going today. We're going to keep going today with part 2. And the article can be found over at apologeticpress.org. Apologeticpress.org. Our friends are tuning in, Carolyn, Barbara, Brandon, and many others. Thanks for tuning in and learning along with us here. We stream live on our Facebook page, Added Souls on our Facebook page. We stream live on my YouTube channel, Stefan Ashmaye on our YouTube channel, and on my Rumble channel, Added Souls on my Rumble channel. And we stream live also on our TikTok platform. And afterwards, I upload the audio version on my Substack profile, my Substack account, and that distributes the podcast session to, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, Google, and all those other locations. The origin and history of Roman Catholicism. Let's get into it now. I'm going to put that up on the screen here, and we're going to read through the article, okay? We established many things yesterday, which is why if you're tuning in newly here to this hour, I'd encourage you to go check out part 1 so that you could follow along to where we are at in part 2. Okay? The Origin and History of Catholicism, part 2 by Moises Pinedo. Catholic development. Catholic development. Remember, there's a lot of information that was said yesterday in part 1. So we continue from that. Catholic development. A new church was born. A new church was born, a completely different church from the church established by Christ. And we saw that with the tangible evidence of yesterday's investigation. The church Jesus built was built in 30 A.D. in Jerusalem during the reign of the Roman Empire, and it came with great outpoured power from the Holy Spirit upon the 12 chosen vessels, the apostles, who stood up among the people, and they proclaimed the kingdom of the Christ, the death, burial, resurrection, witness, and ascension of the Messiah. And they opened the door. They had the keys, the conditions, for all who were outside the border walls of this kingdom, the spiritual house. And they had the keys. They delivered the keys, the conditions for entrance, and all those who received the words, which revealed the conditions, the keys for entrance, all those who qualified and received the words, they qualified, they entered in. God brought them in. He added them in. They went from outside the border walls to inside the border walls. This happened in the first century, 30 A.D. Okay? This was evidenced by tangible proof, defendable in an honorable court of law. It's an undeniable. It's an absolute. Centuries after the fact, centuries after Christ had established his church, came a socio-political power and influence, strategy, agenda to bring forth all religious bodies together as one entity, one universal entity, known as the Roman Catholic Church. So a new church was born, not the church that belongs to Christ, a church completely different from the church Jesus had built in 30 A.D. Jerusalem. While the church that belonged to Christ was born in Jerusalem, Acts chapter 1, verse 12, chapter 2, verse 1, etc., this church, this new church, was born in Rome. And again, this is matter of a fact. The Roman Catholic Church. This church, the Roman Catholic Church, was birthed from Rome, not Jerusalem. Rome. While the church that belongs to Christ was born with spiritual power, Acts 2, verse 2, 3, and 4, great outpoured power from the Holy Spirit, the church that belongs to Christ was born with spiritual power. This new church from Rome, centuries after the fact, was born with political and military power. It's very different. It's very different. The church Jesus built, 30 A.D., Jerusalem. The Roman Catholic Church, centuries after the fact, in Rome. The church Jesus built came with outpoured power from the Holy Spirit. The Roman Catholic Church, centuries after the fact, was born with political and military power. It was for socio-political control. It may have been birthed from sincere motive, yet nonetheless, with the endeavor of political and military might. So, we're seeing the difference between the two. Again, if you're seeking the path of evidence that led us to here, go back to our archived video yesterday, our archived podcast session, in which we go through Article 1. The church that belongs to Christ was born under the authority of only one divine head. Colossians 1:18, the Christ. The church that belongs to Christ was born under the authority of only one divine leader, Christ. The Roman Catholic Church was born under the authority of one human head, the Pope. This new church, the Roman Catholic Church, soon invaded the earth with its new doctrines. Until this hour, till this day, remains the most prominent denomination. It is the first of its kind. It is the first in departure. It is the most ancient denomination, division. So the Roman Catholic Church, of course, soon invaded the earth with its new doctrines, because it was a mishmash of paganism, Judaism, Romanism, and various other isms for the purpose of peace. For the purpose of peace, because at the beginning of Christianity, Rome was not too fazed by that. They weren't too disturbed by the movement of Christianity because they figured it just another branch of Judaism. Yet as Christianity grew, the Roman power recognized we have a problem here. The most persecution upon the Christian movement at the very beginning was Judaism. And some might argue it still is today. It was Judaism. And then when it began to grow outside the control of the Roman power, or grow to the measurement in which Rome now had to do something about it, they certainly tried to extinguish it. That didn't work. The era of Nero did not fulfill what they tried to fulfill or achieve. And so in came Constantine, centuries after the fact we're speaking about. And so the Roman power chose to create this peace among all these different beliefs, which was a departure, no doubt, from the faith, the Christ. So this new Roman Catholic Church soon invaded the earth with its new doctrines. However, an unexpected threat for this kind of Christianity was quickly approaching from the east, which was Islam. With Muhammad as its leader, the religion of Islam originated in AD 622 and spread aggressively because the doctrines of the Quranic, the Muhammad doctrines is to territorial conquest, bloodshed, territorial conquest, submission. Less than 25 years from the beginning of the Hijra, in other words, Muhammad's flight from Mecca, the followers of Muhammad had taken control of Egypt, Palestine, Persia, and Syria. With its thirst for conquest, this religion threatened to convert the whole world to its beliefs. That's how it's designed. That is Islam. It hasn't changed. It's designed to bloodshed, territorial conquest. Soon the threat of Catholicism became increasingly obvious. Many Catholics in conquered nations had converted to Islam out of fear. The advancement of this doctrine over Roman influence and its official religion seemed inevitable. The Roman religion and the unity of the nation that depended on it would collapse soon if something were not done quickly. Thus, the conflicts between Catholics and Muslims gave rise to the infamous Crusades. Right? Crusades. The Crusades, from 1096 until 1270, were military expeditions that started out as a fulfillment of a, quote, solemn vow to regain the, quote, holy places in Palestine from the hands of the Muslims. In November 1095, Pope Urban II encouraged the masses to fight together against the Islamic Seljuk Turks, who invaded the Byzantine Empire and subjected Greek, Syrian, and Armenian Catholics. He also wanted to extend his political and religious power, to encourage Catholics to involve themselves in a bloody war in the, quote, name of God. The Pope offered forgiveness of sins, care for the lands belonging to crusaders, and the prospect of plunder. Although multitudes of people answered the call to join the Crusades, they failed to accomplish the initial goal of recovering the Holy Lands. After many years of fighting and much loss of life, the Holy Lands were still in Muslim hands. Nevertheless, the Crusades improved the relationship between Catholic nations and stopped the advancement of the Turks in Europe. Shortly after the Crusades, new ideologies, which Catholicism considered heresies, threatened the Catholic Church. Multitudes of people, led by relentless religious leaders, executed those considered to be heretics without judicial process. The need for judicial regulation concerning heresy, the Catholic concern about the growth of new revolutionary ideas, and the desire to increase the power of the Catholic Church gave rise to another wave of bloodshed, paradoxically known in history as the, quote, Holy Inquisition. The Inquisition is described generally as the judicial institution created in the Middle Ages to deal with the enemies of the state religion, in other words, Catholicism. There were three types of inquisitions. It's good to see you, Brandon, with us. Yubong with us this morning. Good to see you, brother. Three types of inquisitions. Again, a quick recap here. The church Jesus built was built in Jerusalem in 30 A.D. It came with great outpoured power from the Holy Spirit upon the 12 chosen vessels, the apostles, who stood up among the people and proclaimed the good news of the kingdom, the death, burial, resurrection, witness, and ascension of the Messiah. All those whose hearts were pierced and they believed, they qualified. They qualified to obey the keys, the conditions for legal citizenry. And so upon their obedience, God took them from outside the border walls and he added them inside the border walls. Now, born again, where the saved are, given the family name Christian. Centuries after that, came the birth of Roman Catholicism. It came with socio-political influence and power in a universal way. And we are going through the history of Roman Catholicism in its branch. Okay, so there were three types of inquisitions. Number one, the Episcopal Inquisition was established by Pope Lucius III in 1184. It was overseen and administered by local bishops. Once the orthodox doctrines were established, any deviation from them was investigated and studied by the bishop of the respective diocese. If the, quote, crime was confirmed, it was punished, primarily by canonic penances. Number two, the Pontifical Inquisition was created by Pope Gregory IX in 1231. Okay, this type of inquisition was entrusted to the Dominican order, which answered only to the pontiff. It was introduced in France in 1233 and Aragon in 1238, and in Italy in 1254. The inquisitors would go to the place of the alleged heresy, and with the help of the authorities, ask the heretics to present themselves voluntarily before the tribunal. The public was also encouraged to resort, the public also was encouraged to report heretics. Anyone could accuse anyone else of heresy. The accused was forced to confess his, quote, heresy without an opportunity to confront his accusers or defend himself. A long imprisonment awaited the heretic who denied the charges. His imprisonment would be interrupted by numerous torture sessions until he confessed his, quote, heresy. If he continued to refuse to confess, he was turned over to the civil authorities, who administered the death penalty to the obstinate heretic. Okay. Number three, the Spanish Inquisition is considered the most dreadful of all. That's the one we've commonly more so heard of, I suppose, or have known of. The Spanish Inquisition is considered the most dreadful of all. It began in 1478 with the approval of Pope Sixtus IV, and it lasted until 1834. The tribunal was different from the pontifical, I think, Inquisition, because the inquisitor was appointed by the king rather than the pope. So the inquisitor became a servant of the state rather than the church, you see. Some of the principal reasons for this inquisition were the Jewish threat. In the 14th and 15th centuries, Europe was ravaged by grave economic crisis. Many plagues and epidemics contributed to this situation. Because of their strict hygiene practices, the Jews in Europe survived these epidemics and plagues, while Europeans fell into despair and poverty. Most Jews retained their economic status. This situation produced many protests against the Jews and increased the political and religious avarice for and confiscation of Jewish wealth. Forced to give up their economic activities and being pressured by fanatical priests, many Jews converted to Catholic religion at the beginning of the 15th century. Many Catholics became jealous of the continued financial progress and social position of these Jews and accused them of artificial, insincere conversion. Next, the need for unity in the kingdom. Spain was united politically under the, quote, Catholic rulers, Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile, but there still were different religious ideologies in the country. Hoping to unify their country religiously, the rulers asked the Pope for permission to, quote, purify their kingdom of non-Catholic ideologies by means of the Inquisition. Do we understand that? These were some reasons for the cruel Spanish Inquisition. In time, this brutal tribunal dedicated itself to the persecution of Muslims, alleged witches, and supporters of Protestantism, the Protestants, who were protesting against Roman Catholicism. Though prior inquisitions were cruel, the Spanish Inquisition was devised to terrify even the vilest criminal. Its instruments of torture were even more innovative and inhumane than those of earlier times. Torture treatments included, but were not limited to, number 1, dislocation of the joints of the body. Number 2, mutilation of vaginal, anal, and oral interior cavities. Number 3, removal of tongues, nipples, ears, noses, genitals, and intestines. Number 4, breaking of the legs, arms, toes, and fingers. Number 5, flattening of knuckles, nails, and heads. Number 6, sawing off bodies in half. Number 7, perforation of skin and bones. Number 8, tearing of skin from the face, abdomen, back, extremities, and sinuses. And 9, stretching of body extremities. Okay, now this, of course, was taking place in recorded history. Undeniable, it's there. These things were taking place in recorded history. Yet while these things were taking place in the most ancient departure, known as the Roman Catholic Church, and the known world of its era and its time as it was growing and spreading, while that was taking place, in the privacy of its continuous peace was the church Jesus built, was the church Jesus had built in 30 AD. His church, His Majesty's house, not built by the hands of men, but by the mind of God, was still well and alive. It was still well and alive. So we have to be mindful of this. Although Catholicism may want to deny its past, history speaks loudly concerning the atrocities committed in the name of the Catholic faith. Catholicism may try to hide behind the injustices committed by other religious groups to cover its own disgrace, but the truth is that Catholic mythology was the inspiration for the bloody canvas of other religious artists. They were all wrong spiritually, all of them. None of them truly fighting for Christ or God. It was all socio-political powers, one against the other, and hijacking the verbiage of Christianity for their own agenda and ambition. There is no doubt that the Crusades and Inquisitions played a major role in the development and growth of the Catholic Church in a world that did not want to conform to this kind of religion. And may I say, in my opinion, I much prefer the Roman Catholic Church having military might and socio-political persuasion than Islam. And I do not speak of Roman Catholicism throughout the centuries in which it slaughtered everyone who had a different point of view. I'm speaking of its modern architect and its willingness to say we don't want Islam. But that is, of course, of a socio-political conversation, opinionated, no doubt. No doubt. Good to see you, Steve, with us this morning, as always. So we keep reading, and we enter into another portion of the article titled Catholicism in Recent Times. Catholicism in Recent Times. In the past, the Catholic Church used violent methods to destroy opposition to its teachings and practices. It just is. It just is the truth. It's what it is. Today, without the torture, tribunals, and slaughter, Catholicism seems passive toward the growth of other religions. I've seen that myself in my own community. We were born and raised in Roman Catholicism. It's the only church that was permitted. It was the only church available. They gave us food, shelter, and clothing, right? They gave us schooling. They gave us everything. And we, as a community, would congregate and we would have ourselves la paroisse, la messe, right? But then with time, it seems Catholicism kind of diminished its potency in the community, and, well, people just started not believing in anything, number one. And then number two, all sorts of different religious views were coming in, and it was permissible. So there was a shift, there is a change. The beginning of the 16th century added new fuel to the fire of the Inquisition. 95 reasons for this were nailed to the door of the Catholic Church building in Wittenberg, Germany. Who was responsible? One man, Martin Luther. Although some men before him had attempted to ignite the fire of Reformation, an example, John Wycliffe, John Huss, and I had to study all of these things, by the way, to great detail. The Reformation movement was ineffective until Luther. Martin Luther was born in Eisleben, Saxony, Germany, in 1483. He was the son of a poor miner and paid for his studies at the University of Erfurt with alms he collected. In 1505, he became more interested in the salvation of his soul and the search for spiritual peace than the study of law. He entered the Augustinian monastery at Erfurt, where he became a devout but spiritually troubled monk. By 1508, Luther had come to the conclusion that some teachings and organization of the Catholic Church were completely different from those of the New Testament. The immorality of the clergy in Rome, irreverence toward the sacraments by their own defenders, and the avarice of those who collected indulgences and other penalties set Martin Luther on a collision course with the Catholic Church. In 1517, his 95 Theses disturbed the Catholic world to the point that by 1520, the Pope drew up a bull calling for Luther to recant his teachings or be excommunicated. However, he did not succumb to this threat and continued to spread his teachings. Okay. Others, such as Huldrych Zwingli, from 1484 to 1531 in Switzerland, and John Calvin, 1509 to 1564 in France, and Geneva, Switzerland, also contributed greatly to the Reformation and the development of Protestant religions. Again, we can't stress this enough. This is what's happening amidst the new world that has the Roman Catholic power, the socio-political power and might of the Roman Catholic Church, and those who are protesting against it. This is happening in our history. This is tangible, recorded history we can know to be true. While that is happening, in the privacy of its peace, the church Jesus built is still active. It's still operational. Okay? So the church Jesus built in 30 AD is still operational and still active while all of this is happening out there in the socio-political world regarding Roman Catholicism and all those who are protesting against Roman Catholicism and its atrocities, its false doctrines, it's this, it's that. Various conditions helped the progress of the Reformation in the 16th century. Number one, the Renaissance. This cultural movement stimulated intellectual freedom and awakened enthusiastic study of the scriptures in Europe. Many people began to realize the difference between Catholicism and New Testament Christianity, there's a big difference there. Number two, Corruption of the hierarchy in the Catholic Church, money bought rights and privileges, and immorality ruled the day even among the Catholic clergy. Inconsistency between faith and practice became notorious. Number 3, secular sovereigns' support of opposition to Catholic hierarchy. By this time, the Catholic Church owned a third of the land of Western Europe. Kings and rulers were eager to possess this land, as well as other properties that the Church had taken for itself. Number 4, the advent of the printing press. Luther and others used the printing press to spread their ideas and the scriptures throughout Germany and other countries. The Protestant movement was spreading to many places and was even penetrating Italy with its doctrines. Because of his fear of this new ideological rebellion, Pope Paul III incited the public and church leaders to return to the harsh levels of the Inquisition. In spite of this, the Protestant movement flourished. Again, this is all outside the church Jesus built way back in 30 AD. This is all outside the true and pure accurate doctrine of Christ and those who are following it. This is happening out there among the lost. This is happening out there, outside the border walls of the Christ. This is what's happening in the world throughout our history, the religious world outside our history. It's the same to this hour, by the way. It's the same to this hour. The church that Jesus built is very different than all those churches out there that claim Christianity who are fighting amongst each other. The Catholic Church had encountered a great enemy that seemingly lacked the faintest intention of yielding. However, the, quote, holy office of the Inquisition continued working during the subsequent centuries and expanded to the colonies of Spain in the New World. The tribunal of the Inquisition had jurisdiction over other tribunals organized in Latin American colonies. In these colonies, the Inquisition did not reach the same disgraceful level it did in Europe, since natives merely were beginning to learn the Catholic religion and did not yet understand every Catholic dogma. But the poor example of, quote, kindness shown in conquered nations could not erase the inherent cruelty of the Holy Tribunal. In 1808, Joseph Bonaparte, brother of Napoleon, signed a decree terminating the, quote, holy office, but it was not until 1834 that the final edict of its abolition was published. Having its political, military, and social arm broken, the only thing left for the Catholic Church was to, quote, follow the herd and accept what seemed to be the end of its dictatorship. In sharp contrast to its past, the Catholic Church has become progressively more tolerant of other religions in spite of its public verbal opposition. This tolerance has led a mixture of Catholicism with evangelical religions such as Lutheranism, Pentecostalism, etc., resulting in serious repercussions for Catholicism worldwide. And we had even one pope say, well, everyone's on the way to heaven now, even the atheist. This situation clearly shows that this kind of religion is based not on the Bible, but on religious preferences. No one can say with certainty what the Catholic Church will become or accept in the future, but history vividly illuminates its past beliefs and practices. Its past belief and practices. So, while all of this was taking place in our recorded history, the church that belongs to Christ was active. It's the same today. The church that belongs to Christ is well and alive. Some of us have sought that church. The church that was established on the day of Pentecost in Jerusalem, 30 AD, during the reign of the Roman Empire. It came by the power of the Holy Spirit. That's the church that belongs to Christ. The Roman Catholic Church and every church protesting against the Roman Catholic Church, the Protestant movement, whether sincere or malicious, makes no difference. They do not belong to Christ. They never have. They don't this day. They won't tomorrow. Some of us have to come to that. Some of us had to come to that moment, that challenge. Because Many of us were born and raised in Roman Catholicism. Many of us were also born and raised in the Protestant movement, perhaps the Baptist Church, the Methodist Church, the Baptist, the Pentecostals, the Wesleyans, House of Nazareth, Salvation Army, Gospel Halls. All of those movements were a reaction against Catholicism, but all of it, the complete umbrella of Christendom and all of its denominations, even its most ancient recorded one, the Roman Catholic Church, all of it does not belong to Christ. It never has. It does not to this hour. It won't tomorrow. Now, you can hate that message. You can be offended by that message. You can persecute that message. You can try to extinguish that message. It won't change. It will never change. That's the solid foundation of the Christ. Now you can convert out of it. The gospel call is to call you out of that ocean of religious error and its socio-political influences, its socio-political affairs. It calls you out of that ocean of error, which does not lead to heaven. It never has. It doesn't. It never will. Our loved ones who have passed from this life inside those establishments, those organizations, if we love them and we honor them, they are screaming from the grave that we separate ourselves from those doctrines and that we go back to Jerusalem in the first century. I speak in spiritual terms, that we go back to the first century Jerusalem, 30 AD, and seek the church Jesus built, which is still well and alive today. You can be an added member of the church Jesus built, the church the Bible reveals. The origin and history of Catholicism is an undeniable, objective, absolute fact of our reality. Whether we want to accept it or not is of our own free will. Most will scoff, most will mock, most will deny, reject, and neglect. Most will say, nope, I'm not having it. I'm a Roman Catholic today, and I will be tomorrow, and I will be till the day I die. That was my family. I've heard many of them say it. I'm a Catholic, and I'll be a Catholic till I die, and they died a Catholic. And from the information we've been given in the scriptures, they are begging to have another opportunity on this earth to change the direction they took. They will never have it. I love them. I miss them. In their memory, I will do what's right. If there's any such thing as peace and torment, or any such moment of peace and torment, which there isn't, but if there were to be a single minute millisecond of any kind of peace in torment, it would be the fact that you might be given the thought to know that your family members have chosen to break free from the chains of religious falsehood. In other words, remember the rich man and Lazarus? What was the rich man begging Abraham to do? To send Lazarus to his brothers. Well, our loved ones are begging Abraham to send a messenger to their families. I'm going to honor my loved ones. I'm going to love them and honor them by doing what's right and being a legal citizen of the kingdom of Christ, and not being a member of a denomination out there that's as lost yesterday as it will be tomorrow. It's a difficult, challenging thing to accept. Most won't do it. Most just will not do it. But some of us will. And that's for which we proclaim the message. Some of us will. So, again, before we finish here, the church Jesus built was birthed from the mind of God prior to forming the earth or Adam and Eve. It was birthed from the mind of God. The church Jesus was going to build, the kingdom he was going to be crowned king of, was birthed from the mind of God prior to the formation of heaven and earth, Adam and Eve. It was prophesied by the prophets of old Many of them, Joel, Micah, Isaiah, and many others. It was promised by the Christ while he walked on this earth, and it was purchased by his own blood. He even told the crowds of his age, his era, his time, his century in Mark 9:1 that some would still be alive to see his kingdom on earth. A spiritual house seen through our physical vessels collectively congregated. It was birthed from the mind of God. It was prophesied by the prophets of old. It was promised by the Christ. It was purchased by his blood, and it must be practiced by our faith. This came to be witnessed and recorded on the day of Pentecost. The doors of His Majesty's kingdom were opened by the apostles, who were the recipient endowed by the miraculous outpouring power of the Holy Spirit. On the day of Pentecost, in Jerusalem, during the reign of the Roman Empire, the apostles had the keys, the conditions for entrance. For those who were outside the border walls, seeking to be added inside the border walls, they were given the conditions and the keys, and the apostles were there to open the door for them. The apostles did not build the church. The apostles were not the head of the church. They were servants of His Majesty's church. And all those who obeyed the conditions, God added them as legal citizens of His house. He forgave them of their sins and added them to the location where the saved are gathered. This took place in 30 AD. It's an undeniable, objective, absolute reality. It just is. It is, it is, it is. It never won't be the truth. It's the truth. And it's the truth not because I say so. It was the truth before I existed on this earth. It will be the truth after I am long gone. It's the truth. In 30 AD, the church Jesus built, its doors were opened. That's why in the book of Acts, you see the conversions into the church Jesus built. And then the letters afterwards, from Romans to Revelation, you see them as Christians speak of the kingdom in the past because they are members of that kingdom now. The kingdom was established. It's been established. In the Old Testament, the kingdom is coming. In the gospel, Jesus is saying the kingdom is at hand. It's about to be built. In the book of Acts, it's built, and they're going inside. In the letters, they're speaking it of the past. We are members of the kingdom now. The kingdom is well and alive and has been since 30 AD. And while the world departed in apostasy, while centuries after the fact the world turned and created Roman Catholicism, and after Roman Catholicism was created and expanding in the world, came Protestant movements upon that. All of that stuff don't belong to Jesus. It never has. We're not saying that those organizations do not uphold moral reality. We're not saying that many individuals who are snared in those organizations may be benevolent, they may be kind, they may be loving. We're not speaking of moral uprightness here. We're speaking of the doctrines those churches teach. Those churches don't belong to Jesus, and they don't teach doctrines that lead to heaven. They may teach the golden rule. I was born and raised in the Roman Catholic Church. They sprinkled water on my head when I was a little baby. They made me a Catholic. The Catholic Church at that time, would teach us the golden rule. They would teach us moral uprightness. They would teach us They would teach us the value of marriage. They would teach us to love mother and father, to love neighbor. They taught us the right path in moral standard, but they were teaching us doctrinal error that wasn't leading us to heaven. It's the same with every church out there that is not the church that belongs to Christ. And they fall into two categories, two departments, all of them. One category, they teach a meritorious earning of one's salvation, which is against the scriptures. And the other side of it, the Protestant side of things, teaches that you don't need to do anything, which is again against the Christ. None of them lead to heaven. None of them. It's enough. They just don't. You have to seek the church Jesus built in 30 AD. That's the church some of us purposely sought to find. And through God's providence, we found it. We found it. It's true and real, and it exists, and you can have freedom from sin, and you can find a loving family. It's available. And so the origin and history of Catholicism is part of the recorded history that's out there. But the church, the Roman Catholic Church, does not belong to Jesus. It never has. It never will. I say that because knowing full well that my kind and culture, my family, my neighbors, all of them are Roman Catholics, as we were. But we refuse to continue to follow a myth, a lie, a doctrinal falsehood. We made the sacrifice at great cost to follow the Messiah and not follow the socio-political persuasions and powers of all these religious movements that so hijack and claim the name of Christianity. They don't. Out there in the ocean of religious error, from the Roman Catholic Church to the Baptist Church, the Pentecostals, the Wesleyans, the Methodists, the Gospel Halls, the Salvation Army, the House of Nazareth, the Anabaptists, the Amish, all, you name it. There's thousands of them. Thousands of them. All those churches have created the Christ in their own image. They've created their own personal Jesus. You and I, we were called out of that mess, that confusion. And we were called out by our search of the Jesus in the image of the Scriptures. We sought the Christ in the image of the Scriptures. That's why all these religious locations, more so strongly in Roman Catholicism, we are indeed encouraged to have a Bible, to have their Bible. Their Bible, of course, have added a whole bunch of uninspired books to it. We're encouraged to have a Bible, but we're not encouraged, of course, to understand it. In order to understand it, we have to go through a gatekeeper. It's organized in a way to keep you submissive to a lie. And wolves in sheep's clothing, they seek to infiltrate local assemblies that do belong to Christ in order to take over, to take preeminence. And therein, the Spirit of the Christ removes himself from that local assembly, and it now belongs to the Diotrephic spirit, to the Pharisaical kind. We've seen that happen in real time. We don't need to fall prey to those things. We don't need to continue walking that ancestral lineage. We will honor our loved ones, and we will separate ourselves from religious falsehood. And we want to be members of the church Jesus built. All who sought to be legal citizens of the kingdom of the Christ, to be members of the church Jesus built, all of them were given the same common salvation. They needed to understand the uniqueness of the church Jesus had just built. They had to qualify for their new birth. They needed to be able to say, I will change the way I think, which will lead in a change in my direction in life. I will confess Jesus as my ruler, my king, my savior, the Son of God. I will qualify to call on his name, the Father, Son, and Spirit, and I will be fully baptized, submerged into water, fully buried in water, born again out of water and the Spirit. I come out of that water. God has saved me through his power and his fulfillment on that cross. And he adds me simultaneously to his kingdom, his church, not a denomination, his church. If you'd like to study further, if you'd like to know more, please, if you have a humble, seeking heart, because we're not in the business of arguing in vain. We're not in the business of having useless debate with prideful egos. We seek true, humble search. If you find yourself in the category of a true and humble search, you can reach out to us at the East Coast churchofchrist.ca. We'd love to have you. We're over here on the east coast of Canada in New Brunswick, and we are a healthy and growing congregation. We started with 5 members in 2022, and we are now at 67 in 2026. And the forecast is very encouraging. We'd love to have you with us. Every week we have visitors studying with us, learning with us. If you have a humble, seeking soul, if you are capable of independent thought and intellectual capabilities, we'd love to have you come study with us. East Coast, churchofchrist.ca. Because we're on the East Coast, we are a church that belongs to Jesus. That's what that means. It's descriptive. It's not a denominational title, though there are denominations out there that call themselves the Church of Christ, some of them even cult-like, the Latter-day Saints and whatnot. We have nothing to do with that. We are independent. We have no earthly quarters. We have no earthly headquarters. We are a group of believers disenfranchised with the denominational world. We seek the Christ of the Scriptures, and we found great liberty, love, and healing, and family, and forgiveness with Christ. And we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you with us. Okay, so that'll finish off our podcast session, The Origin and History of Catholicism, Part 2. Again, I encourage you, if you've not listened to Part 1, to go back to the archived session yesterday and listen to Part 1. Stay positive, stay focused. You are loved and you are appreciated. We are off until next Tuesday. We go live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 8 a.m. Atlantic Daylight Time. And we'd love to have you join us. We'd love to have you participate with us. By all means, engage, share the link if you find it to be beneficial to your faith. I got to go do some other kind of work now. Days are filled with work, and that's good stuff. That's good work. And we thank God for all the responsibilities we have. It's good to see you, Tammy, with us. Jeremy, always a pleasure. It's good to have all of you with our sessions. It's very encouraging that many others out there want to learn along with us, right? All right. Peace out.